YouTube, what up? Today, you're not going to be listening to me talk the whole time. We're actually going to do something on this channel. So what we're going to build today is a Google Chrome extension with JavaScript. So every time you open a new tab, we are going to make one of those YouTube counters that a lot of the bigger YouTubers have that they put on their desk and it has their sub count live updating. We're going to make one of those, but every time you open a new tab, it'll show that. It'll show your YouTube sub count, and we'll pull that directly from the YouTube API. This might sound a little bit intimidating, but I'm gonna walk you through every step, and it's actually quite easy. So let's, again, stop listening to me talk and let's get to it.
All right, so if you guys do need to reference any of the code that we do right before we get started, there is going to be a link to my GitHub down below, and it is going to have all the code that we do right. So if you need to look back and reference anything, or if you mess up, then it's all going to be right there. And also, all of the websites that we do visit are also going to be in the description below. So I'm not going to leave you hanging. All right, let's get to it. The first thing we want to do is create a new folder. And we can really name this folder anything. Let's just name it like, Chrome YouTube extension. All right, cool. And we're just going to leave this on the desktop so it's easy to find. And what we're going to do now is open our terminal. I have a third-party app called iTerm that I use. You should definitely get it if you don't have it. This for Mac. I'm not sure if they have a Windows, but anyways, it's going to start me out at my profile, so I can just change directories, which you type CD for, and let's just go to the desktop. And then from the desktop, we can just CD into the Chrome YouTube extension, which is that folder we just made. So we're going to change directory into that folder. So Chrome, I click tab because it does autocomplete, and that is something that does come with iTerm, but it doesn't matter, you don't need it. You can just type in the name of the folder that you put, CD space name of the folder, and then we just click enter, and we are inside that folder. So what we're going to do inside this folder is create 4 files, and we're going to talk about and what all these files do in a sec, but let's just create them. So the first one is a manifest.json file. And to create a file in the terminal, you just type touch and then name of the file. So manifest.json. Cool. And the next one we're going to create is a JavaScript file. So we'll just name this main.js. Again, touch to create the file. And then another one we're going to create is a CSS file, which is what we're going to use for styling. So touch main.css. And I'm just naming them all main just to keep it easy. The names don't really matter that much. And then for the final one, it is an HTML file, which is like the skeleton of the extension. Touch main.html. Cool. And that should be done. So I can open this and prove that it did create all 4 of those files. I'm going to close that though. And what we want to do is open this folder up in our text editor. So I have Visual Studio Code, which is Microsoft's free text editor, and it's great. I've used a lot of text editors, and this is probably my favorite one. So I have a shortcut that is linked with my terminal where I can just type code with a period, and it will open the current folder that I'm in inside of Visual Studio Code. But if you don't have that set up, no worries. You can just open your text editor and then go to File, Open, and then navigate to this folder right here that we made on the desktop, and that'll do the same thing. But I'm just going to use this code. So now we are inside of this folder, and here are our 4 files. The first file that we need to focus on is this manifest.json, because this is going to be all the instructions to the Google Chrome store on what our project is. And we're not going to go through all this and do this our own. I'm just going to have on GitHub again some stuff you can copy and paste and put in this file, and we can change a few things. But if you do really want to look at and know what all this is, again, these links are going to be in the description. You can come here, which is developer.chrome.com/extension/manifest, and it's going to be talking about all of the components of a manifest.json file for the Chrome store. And it's going to tell you what's required, recommended, optional, all of that in the file that you can have. But this is where I'm going to be taking you for this link. Let's navigate over to the GitHub, and let's click on that manifest.json file, and we're just going to copy and paste all this real quick. Let's go back. I'm just going to close out my internet, and then in this manifest.json file, we're going to paste. And then use Command S if you're on Mac to save. And we can change a few things in here. If you do want to change the name of your Google Chrome extension, you can do that right here. Make sure it is still in quotes. And then the version, just keep it at 1 because this is the first version. But the author, you'll probably want to change. You don't really want to use my name, but you can if you want. So right here, the author, inside of quotes again, description, and then we're just going to talk about this real quick is this Chrome URL overrides. When we open a new tab, which is right here, it is going to open the main.html file, which is this right here. So we are actually done with this manifest.json file. So let's do a little boilerplate and set up this HTML file to prove that we actually have set up this Chrome extension. So let's do HTML, and then let's do the heading tag, and inside that let's do the title. I'm just clicking tab to autocomplete, but if you don't, just do an opening and then closing tag. And then inside of the HTML again, outside of the head, we're going to do a body tag. And then inside this body tag, let's just do a quick H1 just for reference. Let's just do hello world and Command S to save that file again. And let's go over to our browser. So navigate to Chrome : 2//extensions. So we'll do that again. Chrome : / extensions, and it should autocomplete for you. Opens, and then what we're going to do is load unpacked, and we're going to navigate on our desktop to that folder that we made, which is the Chrome YouTube extension, and click select. And here it is. It just created a new extension for us. And the only way this works is because we did fill out that manifest.json file. So that's what it's looking for, to actually tell it like, here's the description that we had and here's the title. So it knows that because it's in that JSON folder with all those directions for the Chrome store. And so now to prove it to you, every time I open a new tab, there it is, hello world. So now let's link up our JavaScript and CSS files. Let's minimize that real quick. So to link up our CSS file, inside of this heading tag, below the title tag, we're just going to put a link tag. And then type equals text/CSS. And then inside of this href, we're going to put the name of this file. So main.css. And then it is self-closing. And then below the body tag is where we're going to link the JavaScript script file. So script. Oops, it did that for me. And then inside this first script, we just put attribute source. And then the source is going to be main.js, just the name of that file too. And let's see if these are actually linked. So over in main.js, we're just going to do an alert with hello world. And then in main.css, we're just going to change that h1 tag we made. We're just going to change the font color to red. Super simple. So we should have an alert when we open up the new tab, and the font color should be red. So let's minimize this real quick. Come back over to Google Chrome, and we're just going to click Command R to refresh. And here's the alert, hello world, and the text is red. So now we are all linked up, and that boilerplate is finished. So where we can go from here, let's minimize this real quick. What we want to do is actually now, what we want to actually do now is go grab our data from the YouTube API and get our YouTube subscriber count. So let's get rid of this alert tag. I'm just going to save that file real quick. The first thing we're going to go do is grab our YouTube ID, because we actually need that to grab our data from our YouTube channel. So we're going to go back over to Google Chrome. We're actually going to navigate to YouTube. Obviously. Whoops, I opened it in a new window. It's okay. And then what we're going to do is go over to our channel. And then right here in the URL, this is where your ID is going to be located for your channel. You're not going to be able to see other people's IDs, but you're going to be able to see your own. So after this channel and this /, this right here, all the way up until this question mark, you don't want to include that. This is our ID for our YouTube channel. So I'm just going to copy that and close out of this window. And then I'm just going to save this in a constant so we don't have to go back and grab that again. So constant ID equals, boom, Command S. So there is our YouTube ID that we need. The second step we're going to do is we're going to navigate to the YouTube API and grab an API key, because we need an API key to actually make this API call to grab our data. So to do that, we're going to go over to that link I do have referenced in the description. It's going to be the developers.google.com/YouTube/v3/getting started. So these are the instructions that you need to do to actually create your project, because you need to set up a project real quick, which is really fast on Google, and it has the steps right here. So just a Google account, and then creating a project real quick, and then you don't need to obtain authorization credentials, but just create a project real quick, and then come back to this page, and we're just going to click on API console. I'm not going to go through making a project or anything with you guys. It's really straightforward, and it tells you exactly what to do. But once you do create a project, come back and click this API console. From here, we're going to go to, on the left-hand side, credentials, and then create credentials. And we need an API key. And this is the API key that it's going to give us. So you click this, and it'll copy it. We can go back over to this, and we're just going to do another constant API key. And let's save that API key we just got. So now we have our YouTube channel ID and our API key. So from here, we're going to create a function. Now we just need to actually make the call to the YouTube API and grab that data. So we're just going to make a function, and we can just call this get YouTube subs. All right, let's open up that function body. And the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to use fetch for our HTTP calls. But first, before we do fetch, because we need a URL, we're going to get a URL. So I'm also going to have that URL for you linked in the description below. And we can go grab that real quick. We can go back over to this GitHub, and I'm just going to go to the main.js, and then URL's right here. I'm just going to grab that. Go back over to Visual Studio Code. All right, so here is the URL, but the only thing wrong, I'm going to minimize this so we can see it, and I'm going to shorten the text. The only thing wrong with this URL right here is the ID. You need to put in the ID that we actually grabbed and the API key that we grabbed, which is also going to be right here at key. So we're going to turn this to backticks, which should be underneath your escape button on the far left side of your keyboard. These slight backticks right here, because we're going to use string interpolation, which is new in ES6. So we're going to get, after this equal sign and ID, we're going to get rid of this ID, up to this ampersand, this and sign. So ID equals, here's the ID, up to that and sign, delete that. Put a $sign and an opening and closing bracket. And inside of this bracket, we're just going to type ID. And right there, your text editor should autocomplete to the ID, because this is what the name of the variable or the constant that we made. And then we're going to do the same thing for key. So after this equal sign, and actually all the way to the backtick, delete that. We're going to go $sign, opening and closing brace, and then just type API key. Save. So now we have constructed the URL for our API call, and now we just have to make the API call and get the data. So inside this fetch call we made, put URL. And then what we're going to do after we make that fetch call is asynchronous, so it's going to wait for it to be done, and we're going to do .then. So this means after the API call is done, it's going to give us a result. And from that result, it's going to return us, obviously, the result, but we want to turn that result into JSON. So we're going to get that result and then turn it into result.json. And this .json is just a built-in function in the JavaScript language that turns stuff into JSON format. And then from there, once that is formatted to JSON, we can use another .then call and take the new response and open a new function body with these braces that we just did. And these two don't actually matter what they're called. You can put anything. I just put result because it's easy. It is the result. So real quick, we're just going to see what we're actually getting back now. So we're just going to console.log the result. And so get YouTube subs, let's call that. And then let's save that. So it's actually called every time we open a new tab. So if we open a new tab, open the developer console, there it is, this object. So we get back a little bit of data from the YouTube API. And what we want actually from this data is within items, which is an array of objects, but it's only one object, so it says 0th index. And inside this object, we need to go to statistics and then subscriber count, 8. To prove to you that that is my actual subscriber count, let's go over to youtube.com. If it ever loads. Let's go over to my channel. And here it is, 8 subscribers. And watch my other videos if you want. Alright, enough self-promoting. So we have that subscriber count. So we need to destructure this object we get back and actually show that number 8 on the screen. So we can do that by coming over to the text editor. So we're going to delete this console.log statement. We're going to make a variable called data. And data is going to be results.items, because items was an array. Result is an object, and then items is an object, or items is an attribute within that object. So result.items, and then at the index of 0, because remember, items index 0. And then inside that, we want to go to statistics, and inside that, we want to go to subscriber count. And spelling doesn't matter, so make sure you check that. So what I can actually do is I'm just going to copy these. Item index 0 dot statistics dot, let's go back over here, open up statistics, and copy this subscriber count. Subscriber count. Command S, and let's just console.log this data and see what we actually get. Command R to refresh, and we get that 8. So that is what we want. We want to take this 8 and now display it. Instead of hello world, we want to display this 8 right here. And to do that, we are actually going to go back over to our HTML file, and we're just going to put an ID on this H1 to make it a little bit easier to manipulate it in the JavaScript file. So ID equals, open up quotes, and let's just put sub-count, sub-count. Let's delete this hello world from here and just save it. So we just have an empty H1 tag with an ID of sub-count. We can come back over to main.js, and what we're going to do is go document, which is the document we are in, the document object model, document.querySelector, which is going to allow us to select something, a query on the screen or in the HTML file, and we're going to use a hashtag because that signifies an ID, and that's what we saved, sub-count. And we want to turn that HTML of that H1 to that number we get back from data. So dot inner HTML, HTML is all caps, equals data. And that is it right there. Document.querySelector, inside that hashtag subcount.inner HTML, and we're going to set that equal to data. Let's save that, come back over here and refresh this, and there we go. The 8 is right there instead of the hello world, and that is the subscriber count. And now, obviously, that we have this displayed on the screen, we want to make it look pretty. Like I said, we need to grab a YouTube pixelated image so we can get that sub-counter look. Because this is kind of... We're going to look at that real quick and see exactly what we want it to look like. We want a logo kind of like this. And I actually already have one for you guys in that GitHub, that link. So if you go back to the link and then you go into the HTML file, right here in this image tag, this source right here is a great pixelated image. So we're going to go back over to the code, and like we still have this 8 with this red, let's add this image to it too. So in the HTML, let's add an image tag with a source of what we just grabbed, and then let's actually also add an ID onto this, and let's do this YouTube logo because we're going to want to manipulate this, and then close that off, save that, and let's come back to this tab, refresh it, and that's what we have right now. So obviously this image is a little big, but we'll change that when we manipulate it, make it a little smaller. So basically those are the components we need. So actually we need to go grab this Google Fonts that's going to make the font a little bit better. So let's come back over to the CSS real quick, and I actually don't want to have this H1 be red anymore. Let's just save that so we can get that away. So now it is black. Let's go over to Google Fonts. this is how I found this font, but it is called Orbitron. And when you guys are here, again, I sound like a broken record, but I will leave this link in the description below for you guys. We're gonna select this font. You come here. Let's all you have to do is copy this link right here. So Command C, come back over to the HTML and below our other link that we had. I already have this here actually, but act like I didn't. Come over to this other link we had and just paste that here. Save that. And then one last thing we have to do is go back to this, and then it says in the CSS we have to specify the font family. So let's just copy this. We'll come back over to the code, go to the main.css file, and we'll manipulate the body because that's what we want to change the text of. And let's just copy and paste that. So now let's see how it looks. Command R. And that is what the 8 looks like now. So that is a much better font for this style that we're going for. This YouTube sub counter style. So now let's just build this out. We want a black background with white text and kind of like a darker gray border. So let's do that. So the first thing we got to do is in HTML, we got to group these two, the H1 and the image tag together. So what we can do is make a div. We're kind of making like a container for it. So just cut that and let's put it inside of this div. So we can manipulate both of these at once. Let's put another ID on this div and let's do sub container. Just save that. And it won't look any different. That's because we haven't really done anything in the CSS with it yet. But we go back over to CSS, and then what we are going to manipulate now is the sub container. First things first, let's change the background to black, and then we want to give it a height and a width. So the height is going to be 200 pixels. The width is going to be, we all have different screen sizes, so I just figured let's give the width like 60%. And let's save that. And let's just see how it looks right now. Go back over here. Refresh, and this is it so far. So, doesn't look pretty. Just a black background. But let's change this and try to put these inside of that black. So I think the best way to do this is, let's go display grid. We're going to use CSS grid, which is rather new. And I'm not really going to explain the whole way that CSS grid works, but there's tons of things online that you guys can read up on it. But I will explain what we are doing at least with it. So the display is going to be grid, and that is the way that this subcontainer is going to be displayed. And then we're going to do grid template columns. So what grid template columns does is it defines grids within the subcontainer, or columns, sorry. And we only need 2 columns. We need a column for the image, and we need a column for the sub count. So obviously we want the sub count to be take up a larger section than the image. So we can do 1 and 5, and these are fractionals. So 1 fractional and 5 fractionals. 5 fractional is going to be the sub count. So just save that, and then we want to justify items center. So we're gonna align the items on the y-axis to the center of the screen inside of the subcontainer, and then we'll also do align items center. So this is gonna be on the, or this is gonna be, align items is the x-axis or the y-axis up and down. Sorry, and then justify items is on the x-axis. So let's just save that and see what we got so far. Whoops. Okay, so the 8 is right here. We still need to manipulate the size of this to be able to put it in this container. And we're actually going to do that right now so we can start making things look a little bit better. So let's go back over to the HTML and let's give this image an ID, which we actually already did with the YouTube logo. So we go back to the CSS YouTube logo. And let's give this a height of 75 pixels. A width of 125 pixels, and a margin right of 25 pixels. And the reason I'm giving it a margin right is because I kind of want some space between the 8 and the YouTube logo, just a little bit, just like a little bit extra space. Alright, so we do have this inside the container now. We can't see the 8, So that is something we have to change real quick, and that's one line. Inside the subcontainer, color, the font color is going to be white. And let's actually change the font size where they add it to 35 pixels. Alright, so let's go back here and refresh. Okay, cool. So this is what we're working with so far. Not done, but definitely getting better than what we were at. So this YouTube logo is kind of touching the border of this, and we don't really want that. So let's give this subcontainer some padding so that this is not touching the outsides of this anymore. So we can come over here, and let's give the subcontainer a padding of 25 pixels. Save that. Nice, that looks a little bit better. I kind of want a gray border to kind of match this gray right here, which is kind of like a flatter black, but we're just going to use a darker gray. And then I kind of want the edges round. I don't really want them perfectly square. It looks kind of unnatural, so let's do that. Let's add a gray border and let's round the edges real quick. So, subcontainer, we add a border. Let's do 12 pixels thick, solid, and then we're actually going to add a color. It's going to be dark gray. So it's 353 B48. And this is the color it's going to be. And then to make the edges round, we do border radius. And 8 pixels is a good size. Let's save that and see how it looks. Alright, so gray border and rounded. That definitely looks a lot better. The last thing we want to do is move this to more of the center-ish of the screen. So to do that, I want to add onto the body. Let's make this display also grid. And then let's do grid template rows. I'm going to add 3 rows. And I'm going to position the subcontainer in the middle row. So there'll be 3 rows and we'll section it in the middle. We're going to do 1 fractional, 3 fractionals, 1 fractional. And then what we can do to actually make this change is, since there is 3 rows, there need to be 3 items, and right now there's only 1 subcontainer. Let's just add 2 empty divs outside of the subcontainer. Save that. Let's go back here. And now it is more in the center-ish of the screen. I didn't want it completely center. I kind of just wanted it a little bit down from the top. This is kind of a hacky way to do this, but it works. And I just want to do a quick tutorial with you guys. I didn't want to go deep into CSS. Alright, so now we just want to get this in the middle of the screen on the x-axis. So let's come back over to the CSS. So we have justify items and align items, which is going to align the items inside of the subcontainer. But to align the subcontainer itself, we can do justify self, and we can do center. Save that, come back to the tab, refresh, and there you go. And that looks pretty good to me. This is kind of how it looks. Kind of like this, and we got this right here. Now I do only have 8 subs. Hopefully that number grows, but this should fit most people's things, and it will shrink and grow with screen sizes, which is pretty cool too. Obviously you can mess around and play with the CSS and make it a little bit better, but I more wanted to focus on the JavaScript and actually making the API calls. But pretty easy, pretty quick tutorial. It was pretty cool. I'm going to be doing a lot more like this, just quick, fun tutorials. I don't really like the 10-part video tutorials. You lose steam pretty fast. If you are a beginner on this channel, I really want you to kind of gain steam by doing these shorter tutorials, and it's a lot more fun to do these shorter tutorials anyways.
Alright, that is going to wrap it up for this video, guys. But if you did enjoy this tutorial, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, because I will be doing a ton more tutorials just like this, and it would be greatly appreciated. We're going to try to keep it unique with the tutorials and try something new that other channels and other people online don't really do. So we're going to make some fun stuff. But until next time.